Rome was for sale to the highest bidder. The Praetorian Guard had just murdered the emperor and auctioned the throne to a wealthy senator who offered the most gold. But far to the north, on the banks of the Danube, a general from the shores of North Africa was already marching. He didn't bring gold, he brought iron. His name was Septimius Severus, and he was about to become the first African Caesar, fundamentally altering the course of the Roman Empire. To understand the man who would seize the world, we must look to the sands of North Africa. Lucius Septimius Severus was born in 145 AD in Leptis Magna, a city in modern-day Libya. At the time, Leptis Magna was one of the most beautiful and prosperous cities in the Roman world, a Mediterranean jewel of marble and limestone. Severus was not a Roman of the old aristocratic stock of Italy. He was of mixed Punic and Berber descent, a child of the provinces. While he learned the Latin of the ruling class, it is said he spoke it with a distinct accent his entire life, a constant reminder to the Roman elite that he was an outsider. His family was wealthy and influential, belonging to the equestrian order, the rank just below the senators. Young Severus was ambitious. He moved to Rome at the age of 18, seeking a career in the imperial administration. Under the reign of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, Severus climbed the ladder of the cursus honorum, the sequential order of public offices. He served as a lawyer, a quaestor, and eventually a senator. He was a man who watched, learned, and waited. He saw the transition from the golden age of Marcus Aurelius to the erratic, blood-soaked reign of his son, Commodus. By the time Commodus was strangled in his bath on New Year's Eve 1992, Severus was the governor of Upper Pannonia, a critical province on the Danube frontier. He commanded 3 battle-hardened legions. When news reached him that the elderly Pertinax had been named emperor and then swiftly murdered by the Praetorian Guard, Severus knew his moment had arrived. The Praetorian Guard had done the unthinkable. They stood on the walls of their camp and auctioned the Roman Empire to the highest bidder, Didius Julianus. The legions on the frontiers were outraged. They saw the throne being treated like a piece of cheap furniture. Severus was the first to act. He was proclaimed emperor by his troops at Carnuntum. He didn't wait for the Senate's approval. He knew that in Rome, power didn't come from a vote, it came from the edge of a sword. The march on Rome was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Severus moved with such speed that the capital was paralyzed by fear. Didius Julianus, the man who had bought the empire, found himself deserted. The Senate, sensing the change in the wind, sentenced Julianus to death and recognized Severus as the rightful ruler. When Severus entered Rome, he did so without a fight. He executed the murderers of Pertinax and performed a brilliant political maneuver. He disbanded the entire Praetorian Guard. This elite unit, which had bullied emperors for centuries, was replaced by 15,000 of Severus's own loyal soldiers from the frontier. The message was clear: the old order was dead. However, Severus was not the only general with eyes on the throne. To the east, Pescennius Niger had been declared emperor by the legions in Syria. To the west, Clodius Albinus in Britain was a potential threat. Severus was a master of divide and conquer. He offered Albinus the title of Caesar, the junior emperor and heir, to keep him quiet while he dealt with the eastern threat. The campaign against Pescennius Niger was brutal. Severus's forces chased the rival across the Hellespont into Asia Minor. The decisive clash took place at the Battle of Issus, the same ground where Alexander the Great had once defeated the Persians. Severus's veterans crushed Niger's forces. Niger fled toward the Parthian border but was captured and beheaded. Severus sent the head to Byzantium, a city that had supported Niger, as a grim warning. Byzantium held out for 2 years in a desperate siege, but when it finally fell, Severus stripped it of its assets and executed its leaders. He was a man of iron who did not believe in half measures. With the east secured, Severus turned his gaze toward the west. Clodius Albinus had realized that the title of Caesar was a trap. Severus had just fathered 2 sons, Caracalla and Geta, and it was obvious Albinus would never inherit the throne. Albinus declared himself Augustus and crossed into Gaul. The 2 Roman giants met at the Battle of Lugdunum, modern-day Lyon, in 197 AD. This was one of the largest and most bloody battles in Roman history, involving roughly 150,000 soldiers on both sides. The fighting was so intense that for a moment the line of Severus wavered and the emperor himself was unhorsed, but the discipline of the Pannonian legions eventually broke the British and Gallic troops. Albinus took his own life. Severus, in a display of cold ruthlessness, rode his horse over the decapitated body of his rival before sending the head to Rome to be spiked in the Forum. Now the undisputed master of the Roman world, Septimius Severus began to reshape the empire in his own image. He was a military man through and through, and he had no patience for the pretenses of the Senate. He once famously told his sons on his deathbed, "Be harmonious, enrich the soldiers, and scorned all others." He followed this philosophy to the letter. Severus legalized marriage for soldiers, which had been banned for centuries, allowing them to live with their families in settlements near their forts. He increased their pay significantly and opened up the highest administrative ranks to men of the military rather than just the landed aristocracy. He was transforming the Roman state into a military autocracy. The Senate was effectively sidelined, relegated to a rubber stamp for his decrees. But Severus was more than just a warlord. He was a builder and a legal reformer.
He showered his home city of Leptis Magna with wealth, turning it into a spectacular metropolis with a new forum, a massive basilica, and a grand harbor. He also turned his attention to the law, patronizing great jurists like Papinian and Oppian. These men worked to codify Roman law, making it more systematic and expanding the rights of those living in the provinces. Under Severus, the empire began to feel less like a city-state ruling over conquered lands, and more like a unified global nation. He also sought to secure the frontiers. In 197 AD, he launched a massive invasion of the Parthian Empire in the east. His troops sacked the Parthian capital of Ctesiphon and annexed Layer in Mesopotamia. This victory provided the empire with a much-needed influx of wealth and reinforced the myth of Severus as an invincible conqueror. He took the title Parthicus Maximus, echoing the glory of Trajan. Yet, despite his successes, the internal life of the imperial family was a theater of shadows. Severus had married a powerful and highly intelligent woman from Syria named Julia Domna. She was the daughter of a high priest and brought a new sense of Eastern mysticism and intellectualism to the court. Together they had two sons, Caracalla and Geta. As they grew, the two brothers developed a pathological hatred for one another. They fought over everything, and the palace was divided into two warring factions. Severus, seeing the cracks in his dynasty, hoped that a rigorous military campaign would force his sons to work together and harden them for the realities of rule. In 208 AD, though he was aging and suffering from severe gout, Severus traveled to the far northwestern edge of the empire, Britain. The northern tribes, the Caledonians and the Meaetae, were raiding the province, and the defenses at Hadrian's Wall were failing. Severus arrived with a massive force, intent on conquering the whole of the island, territory that even the greatest emperors had failed to hold. The campaign in the Scottish Highlands was grueling. It was a war of attrition against a guerrilla enemy in a land of mist, bogs, and freezing rain. Severus did not care for the terrain. He ordered his men to build roads through the marshes and bridges over the rivers. He intended to commit a scorched earth policy to end the Caledonian threat forever. But his body was failing him. He had to be carried in a litter to the front lines. While campaigning in the north, the animosity between his sons reached a breaking point. It is rumored that Caracalla even attempted to stab his father in the back during a ride, only to be stopped by the emperor's guards. Severus was heartbroken but remained focused on the state. By 211 AD, his health collapsed entirely. He withdrew to Uberk, the modern city of York. On his deathbed, surrounded by his bickering sons and his loyal generals, the man who had risen from the sands of North Africa to the heights of world power gave his final instructions. He told his sons to stay united and pay the soldiers. He reportedly looked at the urn that would hold his ashes and said, "You will hold a man for whom the whole world was not enough." Septimius Severus died in York in February 211 AD. He had ruled for 18 years, a period of stability bought with blood and iron. He was buried with the full honors of a Roman god, but the legacy he left behind was complex. On one hand, he had saved the empire from the chaos of the civil wars. He had strengthened the borders and professionalized the army. He had elevated the provinces and paved the way for a more inclusive Roman identity. He was the architect of the Severan dynasty, a period of architectural and legal brilliance. On the other hand, by making the military the sole pillar of imperial power, he had set a dangerous precedent. By enriching the soldiers and scorning the Senate, he accelerated the decline of the civil institutions that had held Rome together for centuries. His death sparked a cycle of violence between his sons that would eventually lead to the crisis of the 3rd century, a 50-year period of near collapse for the Roman world. Septimius Severus remains a towering, controversial figure. He was the outsider who became the ultimate insider, the provincial who showed Rome that its future lay not in its past traditions, but in the strength of its frontiers. He was the African Caesar, a man of relentless will who stood at the crossroads of history, holding the world together by the sheer force of his ambition. If you want to discover more hidden stories from the ancient world, subscribe now.